Hello and welcome everyone to the Beacon of Light podcast tonight we have a very special guest and I'm really excited to have him talk to all of you with his positivity and to know that you're not alone in this journey of life. That negativity you might be feeling, well, tonight hopefully we will have some mindset change in that so that you can feel that beacon of light. But before we start talking to him, we're going to jump into this. I'm April Tribe Juke. Welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. I believe we are all made with light, and light is hope. This podcast brings authors who write stories of hope to all of you. Your journey to be inspired and amplified by these stories starts now. And we are back. Thank you all who are joining with us live tonight. This is an exciting time, and welcome, Bruce. He is our author for this evening, and so let's find out a little bit more about himself. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Bruce.
Well, good evening, April, and it's so great to be with you. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Let's see, I am a husband to one. I am a father to two daughters, 26 and 23. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and spent a good part of my professional career in the healthcare technology business and sales and marketing and customer relationship work. And that's sort of been my career until recently. I've kind of had my foot in two boats for several years, and we're going to talk about the foot in the other boat for the most of this podcast, which is the author art part of it. And kind of a little bit more of my background, which might be helpful, is there was a real medical miracle that occurred on the day that I was born. My mother, when she went into labor with me, suffered a heart trauma that's called a dissecting aortic aneurysm. And most 99% of folks that had that trauma occur during labor had passed away during the delivery process, along with the child. Very few of the children survived. And the miracle that we received was that not only was she saved, but there were surgeons who had just perfected a heart procedure that were visiting professors at the hospital university where we were admitted. They came over, they delivered me. Then she plunged into a 60-day battle of 3 experimental surgeries and emerged for the first time to see me when I was 60 days old. I tell that story often because what happened after that is the house I was raised in was one of complete gratitude and complete believing in the miracle of her being saved medically by this amazing procedure and people and situation. And in fact, there were 18 pints of blood that were required for her to be on the heart lung machine back then, and 15 of those pints came from members of her church. And my father, who was kind of the silent patient in this whole ordeal, was a lover of words, poems, loved to write plays. He was a musician as well. And so when my moment happened, which ended up starting the book, my mom's gratitude and my father's love of words forged, and it allowed me and gave me the gift, which I believe was divinely given to me, to start writing words of encouragement for myself in a really unique way, which is called an acrostic poem. And so that's how my life kind of transformed into taking that trauma and that could have been tragedy that ended up being a real blessing. And then how do I make use of that in my life when I faced what I called my BAM moment, or that moment of trauma that to me it was just professional, but at the same time it was the same type of woe is me type of feeling potentially. So that's kind of the story of Bruce, kind of in a nutshell. That's how we kind of ended up where we're on this podcast, and I'm an author and been doing some speaking and the TED Talk and other things.
Wow, an incredible journey right from the start. There is something about gratitude that really pulls you forward because suddenly your eyes have a new perspective and it shifts from this self-innered, possibly selfishness, this to outward, because
Yeah.
you notice so many of the beauties, so many of the gifts, so many of the small things as well as the large. And then you realize it's almost like as the astronauts out there when they look out from space and look back at the planet and have that overview effect, that perspective shift. There's nothing like it. And if you can understand what gratitude can do for you, and what a beautiful month to be discussing this, thank you, Bruce. This is that opportunity for many of you out there to understand, to learn, and to hopefully tonight feel some of that light within you. So, Bruce, you have an amazing book here, and I'm going to pop it up on the screen. Above the chatter, our words matter. So tell me how this title came about.
Yeah. Well, if we fast forward then to when my career changed and when my job ended, um, I woke up one morning and pounding in my head was a single word. And it was probably mom's gratitude and dad's love of words kind of coming together. And I wrote a word vertically, and it was the word strong, because that is something that I was telling myself I needed to be for my children and my wife, and to get back on my feet and just sort of, it wasn't in hindsight maybe a major tragedy, but for me it was, I thought I was going to retire in this industry and in this company. So I took that word and I just wrote it vertically. I said my dad loved poems and plays. He also loved crossword puzzles. So it kind of looked like a down word in a crossword puzzle. And I looked at it, I said, what does that mean? What does it mean to be strong? And seriously, April, within a minute's time, I just used each letter and defined it. It meant stand tall, remain optimistic, now go for it. Those were the letters. And I went, wow, let's act on that today. What can I do to be strong? Strong for my family, strong for what might be next, strong for, all the other emotions that were going through my mind and body and spirit when I lost this job was, anger and denial, and then there was self-doubt. But the word strong is the one that stuck with me. Well, 400, over 400, 420 some consecutive mornings, I woke up and was looking for, what's the word today, God? And so there were, every morning at the same time, I did this same exercise. It was very incremental. It's incredibly soothing for me. And it was only meant to be a journal. Quite honestly, there was no, okay, Bruce, you're not going to write a book now that you've got some free time on your hands. And there were some instances along the way of sharing these messages with others, and the feedback that we got, that this was having an impact on others as well as myself, that we kind of stepped into that process of, okay, what would it look like if we did take this, catalog of writing and try to do something that's going to impact and have a ripple out beyond just me.
Amazing. Words, letters, as they are built upon each other, they really make the difference.
Yeah.
After all, those who believe and read their scriptures know that as God speaks a word, universes are born, the worlds can be changed, created. Same is impactful for us
Yeah,
as words are
absolutely.
given to us in negativity or positivity. The impact on us can be lifelong and lasting. And we hope that we are sharing that bit of hope to all, and not in those negative ways. Now, when we make those mistakes and we get after people in a negative tone, we can stop, we can change, we can repent, we can ask for forgiveness, and move forward, change, understand that there's something probably bigger out there. So, within this chatter and finding out that your words matter, you are talking about 400 consecutive mornings where you're doing these exercises.
Yes.
And tell us about how some of, like, how did people start to read some of this prior to you putting it into a book? Did you speak about it at church, talk about it in conversations at work, or just with everyday neighbors? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, there was a small community of folks that were friends and former coworkers and coworkers that kind of knew that this had started. And one story that I share this a lot because it really was the pivotal point when this became more than just scribbling words down and hoping that, releasing them to the universe, they might touch someone. I wrote a word one day, and the way I was distributing them, April, was through just a group text. I had, 15 or 20 people, and then I'd share them maybe at work. Here's people would come in and say, "What's the word you wrote today, Bruce?" And it was rather informal. But one day I got a call from a friend who was a pediatric heart surgeon. So his profession, if you net it down, is he operates on hearts for babies, and they could be 6, 7 days old, and their hearts could be the size of a walnut or smaller. And he called me and he said, "I really needed your word today." And I said, "Well, Jeff, tell me more, please. What happened?" He goes, "Well, we were getting ready to operate on a 7-day-old baby, and there were 6 of us in the OR scrubbing, getting ready for this surgery. And there were 10 possible challenges that we would face when we opened the child's heart. And for each of those 10 possibilities, there were multiple scenarios to solve the problem. And we were going through that rapidly as we were scrubbing. And we weren't overwhelmed, and we weren't, over our skis. We knew that we could get through this, but it was tense." And he said, "You texted me, and my assistant reached into my lab coat, my scrub coat, and I asked, 'What is it?' He said, 'It's a text from Bruce.' And Jeff said, 'Read it to us.' And the word was, 'Today, be calm.' And I wrote calm vertically, and it was catch a little moment." And he said, "We stepped back and regrouped for a second. We caught a little moment, and got us ready to walk into that OR with maybe a little bit more of a settled process, a settled mind." And that just changed everything for me. I mean, how do you know the kind of impact you're going to have when you encourage someone? I needed the word because I probably wasn't calm that morning. But when it rippled out and my friend messaged me and took the time to call me and told me that impact, that's how it really solidified. This needs to be something. It is something bigger than me.
Beautiful. The impact on that child growing up and living their full potential and possibly having family and more generations. That is a really amazing thing thought about from a word. That is an all-knowing God that can see well beyond what we can. And sometimes our worry, our fear really is something that we unfortunately believe in. We believe in the fear and not in the faith.
Yeah.
So these words, as they come to you, and now you've had this experience of quite an impact on an entire team, for a child, for that family, and
Yeah.
for that ripple effect. This idea of then putting it into a book came about how?
Yeah. So there were really 3 ways to think about going about the book. And at that point in time, it was 2016 when it published. So, 7 years ago now. There was, okay, go and self-publish your book, and the capabilities at that point to me were a little bit uncertain for would I be doing the right things? Would I be making any mistakes that I would regret as far as how that went? Because I did truly and still do believe that this was something written through me, not by me. And that means the honor of having that gift and being that vessel to just write this down was very important. So step 2 was, where do we find a publisher the traditional way? And that was kind of wrought with, oh my God, send out 100 manuscripts, potentially lose control. I'd never done it before, right? So I was running with scissors, quite honestly. So I found a process that's called, at that point, it was called hybrid publishing, where you find a literary agent, or you find someone who is a literary consultant who has done books and will kind of Sherpa you through the process. So I went through that process and took a risk and went out and said, "Hey, would you take a look at my manuscript? Would you look at my chapters?" And very fortunately immediately got a call back and said, let's figure out a way to work together. So that's what we did. And I was guided through the process. And probably the thing I remember the most, well, there's really two things I remember the most. One was taking 422 pages to a coffee shop and saying, okay, this word kind of goes in the same category as this word, and maybe we'll call that determination, name it and claim it. So that's the name of one chapter. So everything that's kind of about being determined, we'll just put those in a pile. And then there was one about, faith and values. Okay, we'll see how many words will fit into that. And it ended up being, a dozen and a half piles that then became chapters. And that's when it really started to go from, I guess, just accepting the word that came that day to trying to organize it into chunks that would matter. And the second thing I remember is when I was working with my literary team, was we didn't want this just to be, turn the page is another word, turn the page is another word. So we decided it was really important to have some pause points in the book. So, there's some chapters that just have a single quote on them that I've written. So it kind of breaks things up. And, then you just kind of follow the lead of the publisher that says, okay, this kind of work on a back cover, work on an introduction to your reader. What do you want to do for the graphics, for the cover, and all that kind of stuff? What can you want to get some quotes for the inside jacket? Just, the sort of the technical aspects of putting those things together.
That is really a great example of how sometimes the organization of a book starts to pop together, because a lot of the times as writers, and almost everyone out there will say, don't do it this way. Find out what people need and want and to read first and write that. Many of us as writers are inspired and we write, and then we're like, okay, who needs this? And then
Yeah.
we spend our time trying to find out who needs it. So it's a little backwards, but in the end, the way to someone's mind, heart, and soul, I don't think it matters how you get there. As long as you follow through on what you were prompted to do, and if it is helping people, there you go. So, there is definitely some flex with all of that. So, Bruce, this has been an awesome opportunity to kind of see some of these, back places of how you got things found and started out. So, tell me one part or maybe a chapter that maybe surprised you as you were organizing things together. Like, wow, I didn't know I wrote so much about that topic, or so to speak.
Wow. Yeah, there's a chapter called, and I should probably let me go grab a copy here. There's a chapter called Unique. Unique. And it's spelled Younique. And it was one where, if you think about writing, as I was writing this, it was to sort of heal and encourage myself and hopefully bubble out and do the same. But the chapter Unique was specifically a collection of acrostics encouraging others to understand how amazing they are as they are, period. No change needed. One of my favorite 6 letters are URE and UF. You are enough. And so I wrote that, and as it came together, it became a chapter that applies a lot to, our younger folks these days, our youth, because of the challenges and struggles that they go through in the teen years and growing up, and identity and all of the things that they're exposed to that we probably weren't as much in our face, whether it's our phones and those sorts of things, with fear of missing out, or I'm not this, I'm not that. And so that's probably one of my favorite chapters, is the chapter that is called Unique. And it's chapter, I should know these, right? It's chapter 9. It says, Unique. Thank God no one is like you. And let me just take a second. It's chapter 7, page 73. Just the first paragraph, it goes like this. The concept of the popularity contest is hard to eliminate, especially in the fast-paced, images everything world of today. Please take pause. Know that God created every person with unique gifts, talents, and purpose. Take a moment each day to celebrate your uniqueness, for these qualities make you the amazing gift that you are. And then the first word I wrote in the chapter is the word unique. And it goes like this. The U is understand that you rock. And notice the nuances. They make you special. I internalize your uniqueness as a gift. Q is quick. High five yourself. The U, take a little poetic license here, is you are amazing. Deal with it. And E is embrace the difference. So I think that chapter, as the pieces came together, was maybe patchwork for something for my daughters at the time that I maybe wasn't thinking about, but that's probably the one that's the most shocking to me, I guess.
Wonderful. Actually, I have someone here that has made a comment that maybe you can comment on. So I'm going to put it up on the screen.
Okay.
And see if you can read that. And maybe you'd like to share a comment with her.
Yeah, gratitude is something I have a hard thing to do. Negative. So forgiveness is so hard, accepting new things in life. Yeah, no. So Abby, you are not alone. And one of the things that April and I were talking about before we came on for the podcast is that I haven't figured this out. I'm a mouse in my own laboratory, and you know, even if you can find something in the messiness that you can be grateful for or thankful for, and man, start small and let it build. Don't expect to be grateful for massive stuff. It might be just I'm grateful that this glass of water tasted great. Now that might sound really I don't want to say insincere or disconcerting, but it is a discipline, I believe, to learn. I was blessed in that, my mom woke up every day after I was born and grateful that she woke up that day. And I realized that not everybody is in that space. And that's probably one of the hardest things for me to communicate when I'm doing a talk is that I didn't have a lot of those challenges, but finding something. And sometimes the forgiveness is more for us than it is for the other person. Um, maybe that's a way to look at that, and maybe you already have, but that's kind of my first thought. So I hope a comment there may have been helpful.
I think the forgiveness of self is usually our last face up. We think, forgiving others on the outside, especially if there's been trauma and abuse, we might think, oh, and we'll get to that, or I can forgive them here and I don't have to face them, which is true, which is very true.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we still hold on to just a little bit because it's easier that way. We're used to it. Maybe we just don't feel that we are enough. But really, in positivity and in looking outward, the more we serve and the more we reach beyond ourselves, we start to get a perspective that forgiveness of ourselves really is possible. And that is what is so important when we can drop things, let them go, and continue to move on because there's always somebody else to help. And we're talking about in healthy situations, we're talking about in challenges that you might have.
Yeah.
There is still light and positivity. There's opportunities for all to come to that point. And those words that are within your book might be just that nudge that someone needed. Might be just like the surgeon, the story that you shared earlier in the podcast. Beautiful, calm. Going in with a mindset like that prior to surgery, amazing.
Yeah.
Quite an
No,
answer.
it's hard, and I don't want everyone to underestimate that. Um, you know, uh, it was my my deal wasn't being, hurt by someone physically or sort of things held back from me where I was, deprived of things. Mine was a job. And at some point I had to say there's things in this situation that are are there for me to take and use somewhere. And I didn't know where. But I think when the first or at least the second person called me maybe a year later and said, "Hey, I've just been laid off." I'm like, "Let's get some coffee. Let's have a conversation. I can't fix it." But man, they wanted to know, what did I learn? What did I go through, etc. So, and again, I don't want to oversimplify this, but maybe to just try to put it in two different buckets. We can see things that happen in life as baggage. We carry that with us. Yeah, I get that. Man, I still have listen, we could unpack this whole other side of a show if we wanted to. But there's also that opportunity to take what that is and pick the nuggets out and say, this is my treasure chest. These are the things that I've gone through that I've learned from to help others, to navigate differently next time, or I'm stronger because of this experience. And you're going to run into someone at some point in your life where that experience you had, if you're in gratitude, not glad that it happened, I don't mean that, but in gratitude of where you are now, I truly believe you can bring something to someone else. I mean, I can only believe that because of the ripple effect of, my friend that's the surgeon, or another friend who called and said, "I just wrapped up my chemo therapy for cancer, and your book was with me at every session, and it really helped me get through it." I mean, please don't take that as a compliment for Bruce's writing, but take that as something that just gave me such affirmation that what I went through, man, we can use that in a way that serves others.
Very true. Within that service and that positivity, there is just such hope and light. And that is how this Beacon of Light podcast came to be, gathering authors together to share what has been impactful for them. Sometimes it is a story, sometimes it is an experience, sometimes it's a combination of so many things. And we are so grateful that great authors like you come on to the Beacon of Light podcast and share these messages out there. So, Bruce, tell us, where can we find this book?
Yeah. So of course it's available at all the online shops. However, at my website, which I think you've passed, it's the above the chatter ourwordsmatter.com. I've tried to do something a little unique, and that is with every order that comes through my website, I'll sign the book, and if there's a personal message or if you're giving it to someone, I'll communicate back and say who are we writing this for, and sort of try to make it a tailored message. And I'm not saying one versus the other is better. You just go to Amazon and get it if you'd like, or you can reach me directly and kind of stay in contact with me at above the chatter ourwordsmatter.com.
Sorry, a lot to sign there. Got to get it all in.
That's
Momentary
awesome.
pause. Fingers are flying. So thank you so much, Bruce. If there's anything that you would like to share with the audience before we close up tonight, this is your 2 minutes and share to the world.
Wow. Well, first of all, April, thank you so much for having me on your show. First, and the second thing I guess I would say, if there are some aspiring authors out there, your story matters. And if you're stuck and getting started, start by writing a letter to your reader. Just write the letter to your reader, what you hope that they would get from you. So that would be kind of from the aspiring leader perspective. I would also encourage folks, because I think words are so important, to write the word words horizontally, normally, WORDS. And then under the S, write the word sword, SWORD. And if you look at that long enough, you'll see that words are a sword. And so how we use them as we speak to ourselves, as well as out loud to others, can either slay us or protect us, just like a sword does. So that's one way that I work really hard to pay attention to what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. I'm not perfect at it, but realizing how impactful our words are. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. just look at our words and maybe choose one of appreciation over one of the opposite of that, and just start building a habit of doing that. Then it can become a lifestyle over time.
Beautifully said. With that, we will wrap up the light and hope tonight. And thank you again, Bruce, for coming on and for being a part of the Beacon of Light podcast this evening. Make sure you guys go grab his book, go to his website, go to Amazon. Above the Chatter, Words Matter. Thank you again for being a part of us. And we hope that you have a beautiful holiday season as Christmas is coming upon us. Remember your reason, your heart, your words, your family, and how you can share a little light this month. Thank you all, and we'll talk soon.